Okay, folks, strap in and get ready for adventure, because we're taking a deep dive straight into the heart of Mongo this time.
Yes.
We're talking about Flash Gordon, baby.
Yeah.
The RPG adaptation running on Savage Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
For those of us who want less spreadsheet and more, just pure, like, screaming Flash,
Absolutely.
We're talking about ray guns hotter than the surface of the sun rocket ships. So cool. They make the Millennium Falcon look like a beat-up station wagon.
Yeah.
And this over-the-top kind of gonzo action that would make, like, 80s action figures blush.
Right.
We're not just going to skim the surface here. We're going to really get down and dirty with the mechanics and the setting.
Let's do it.
What makes this game tick for us tabletop RPG fanatics, right?
Yeah, I'm so excited.
So let's kick things off with Mongo itself.
All right.
Because this is more than just your typical sci-fi or fantasy setting, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Forget your boring Dungeons and Dragons, your standard elves and orcs. Mongo's a completely different beast. It's wild, it's weird, and it's got that classic pulp sci-fi vibe, but cranked up to, like, 11.
Mm-hmm.
And then they injected it with just pure 80s energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like all of those classic adventure tropes, those exotic locales, the, over-the-top villains, everything. And it just gives them this really fun, almost like a Saturday morning cartoon kind of energy,
I'd love that.
It's like if you smashed Buck Rogers together with Luke Skywalker and sprinkled in that kind of gloriously cheesy charm of the old Flash Gordon serials.
Yeah.
And of course, you can't forget that 1980 movie. I mean, come on. Queen soundtrack.
So good.
So
Sweet. So you say more than just a setting.
Yeah.
What did that actually look like, when we're talking about Mongo?
So the first thing that really hits you when you open up this book and start reading about Mongo is just the sheer variety of environments on this planet.
Okay.
I mean, we're not talking about your typical fantasy map with a forest, a mountain range, and, maybe a little desert off to the side.
Right.
Mongo throws everything at you and more.
Okay.
So one minute you could be, trekking across these just absolutely scorching volcanic deserts that make Tatooine look like Huff.
Okay.
Then the next, you're hacking your way through these dense, steamy jungles that could just swallow you whole.
Right.
But that's just the surface, Yeah. You've got these raging underground seas. There are these, lightless caverns that are teeming with God knows what. And then you could be, soaring high above it all in Sky City amongst the clouds. I mean, The diversity is just incredible. It means that every single adventure can feel completely different from the last.
Yeah, I mean, you could run a campaign for years in this setting and barely scratch the surface of all the different environments.
Absolutely. I mean, and this is all tied together by the tyrannical rule of Ming the Merciless.
Of course.
This guy, he is like the ultimate bad guy. He's got the iron fist, he's got the stylish goatee.
Love it.
But simmering beneath the surface all across the planet, there is this rebellion brewing, and these are the Freemen.
Okay.
Secret society dedicated to overthrowing Ming, and they've got this great battle cry, for Mongo and freedom, death to Ming.
I love it.
It's just that classic pulp heroism,
Yeah, and so does that mean that we actually get to, like, participate in this rebellion rather than just, be side characters in Flash Gordon's story?
Yes, that is what makes this so cool.
Okay.
The game puts you in the driver's seat as heroes of this rebellion.
I like that.
So you could be down in the sewers of Mingo City, before Flash even arrives on the scene, sabotaging Ming's operations.
Yeah.
Or you could be dealing with the power vacuum after Ming is defeated, facing off against his son Kang.
Right.
It's all on the table.
That's so cool.
It gives you real agency in the setting rather than just playing as, sidekicks to this established hero.
Yeah, it makes it feel more like your story,
Exactly.
And that's a much more compelling way to tell a story.
For sure. And the default timeline for a lot of campaigns is during that long rebellion that Flash eventually leads.
Right.
So those iconic characters, they still exist in this world. Flash is king of Kira. Yeah. Volton and the Hawkmen are allied with the Freemen.
Of course.
Prince Baron and Aura, they've got their kid. It's a rich, established world, but there's tons of room for your own group to become legends.
I like that.
Yeah.
So we know the setting is pure pulp gold. But how does the Savage World system, which is known for, being fast and loose and action-packed, how does it handle all of this Flash Gordon craziness?
That's a great question, and they do a fantastic job. So this isn't just like reskinning Savage Worlds with the Flash Gordon logo. This is a full-blown reimagining of the system to really capture that over-the-top feel.
Okay.
Right, the rule book itself makes a point of this. They're saying, we built this to bring the action and the dramatic flair of Flash Gordon right to the tabletop.
Yeah.
And one of the ways they do this is through these specific setting rules that are tailored just for Mongo.
Okay.
So, for example, one of the coolest and most evocative rules is how characters can become the savior of the universe. It really sets the stage for some epic, heroic adventures.
Yeah, I could already hear the Queen soundtrack kicking in,
Oh, for sure.
Savior of the universe.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other tweaks and additions that make this feel authentically Flash Gordon?
So in addition to the setting rules, they've also got all these new edges and skills that are just pure pulp goodness.
Okay.
So for example, there's this edge called Mongo-Tech.
Okay.
It's for characters who choose the arcane background weird science, and it lets them basically build all these crazy gadgets on the fly.
Oh.
Using their weird science skill and PowerPoints, it's like the classic sci-fi invention trope where you can MacGyver together a ray gun or a, anti-gravity device out of whatever's lying around.
Right.
And the core of the game, the emphasis is really on that fast-paced cinematic action, like the rapid-fire fight scenes in the serials, the daring escapes.
Right.
That's the energy that the game is going for.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, so Mongo-Tech, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. Or for, glorious, unpredictable chaos. I love it.
Yes!
So let's talk characters. Who are we actually playing as in this universe?
So you have a lot of options.
Okay.
You could make a character who's native to Mongo.
Okay.
With all sorts of, strange and wonderful racial abilities and maybe some inherent quirks.
Right.
Or you could play as an Earthling who has somehow stumbled through a portal or, ended up on this planet.
Gotcha.
Now the game gives Lings a little bonus.
Okay.
The gravitically graced trait, which gives them a D6 in strength right off the bat.
I like that.
Earth gravity is rough.
Right.
It makes sense.
Makes sense.
So instance for strength just for showing up on Mongo.
That's a cool touch.
Yeah.
So what about the character archetypes? Are we talking dashing explorers, swashbuckling pilots, all that good stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've got a whole list of archetypes to get your imagination going.
Okay.
So you've got your classic bounty hunter, Boba Fett with the ray gun.
Yeah.
You've got the citizen, which is that classic, every man who is thrust into extraordinary circumstances.
All right.
Think Luke Skywalker before he met Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
You've got the criminal, maybe a Han Solo type with a shady past.
I like it.
You've even got a diplomat who is navigating the treacherous politics of Mongo.
Oh, that's correct.
Trying to, broker deals and survive in this world.
I like that. That sounds like a really fun character to play.
Yeah.
So yeah, tons of variety. It seems like the foundations for some really interesting adventuring parties.
Oh, for sure. And the list doesn't stop there.
Okay.
So you've got the engineer who's, tinkering with Mongo-Tech, keeping those rocket ships flying.
Right.
You've got the entertainer.
Okay.
Maybe a glamorous space opera singer who is secretly a master of disguise.
Oh, that's cool. I'm already picturing a space carman in San Diego,
Yes, exactly.
Like,
This the escaped slave.
Okay.
Who's fighting for their freedom and maybe the freedom of others. You've got the explorer charting the uncharted territories of Mongo.
Nice.
It's
fantastic. Space opera singer / secret agent. Sign me up.
I know, right?
So what else we got?
We've also got the guardsmen, loyal to their kingdom or their city, but maybe with a rebellious streak.
Okay.
You've got the huntsman tracking down all these bizarre creatures.
Yeah.
The medic who's patching up your crew after they get into a scrape with Ming's forces.
Very important.
Essential.
Yeah.
You've got the mercenary, selling their skills to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
The merchant dealing in exotic goods across Mongo.
Okay.
The miner uncovering secrets deep beneath the surface. And then you've got the really specific Mongo stuff, like the Mongo-mancer, who channels the power of white sapphires through crystals.
Oh.
You've got the Mongo-Tech inventor.
Right.
You've got the noble with all their, advantages and responsibilities.
Yeah.
You've got the officer leading troops into battle.
Okay.
The pilot soaring through the skies in a rocket fighter.
I mean, classic Buck Rogers taking down Tigerman,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So good.
It's fantastic. And you've got the pirate raiding and plundering across the system.
Pirates in space. I love it.
It's great.
Okay, so a Mongo-mancer with crystal-powered magic? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So is this the end of the archetypes or is there more?
No, there's still more.
What else we got?
So you've got the priest maybe worshiping an ancient Mongo deity.
Okay.
You've got the scion, someone with rare and potentially dangerous mental abilities.
Right.
You've got the rebel fighting for freedom, the royal forester protecting the forests of Arborea.
Right.
You've got the sailor navigating Mongo's alien seas.
Very cool.
You've got the scientist pushing the boundaries of Mongo's strange science.
Nice.
You've got the soldier, frontline fighter.
Okay.
And then you've even got the spy dealing in secrets and intrigue.
Yep.
And the tribesmen from the, more primitive and isolated parts of the planet.
Wow.
It is a truly comprehensive list. You could play any pulp hero you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you could play this game for years and never play the same character twice.
Yeah.
So once you've picked an archetype, how does the character creation actually work using the Savage Worlds system?
So for the most part, it follows the core Savage Worlds framework.
Okay.
You're assigning points to your attributes, agility, smarts, spirit, strength, vigor, and then you're buying skills.
Right.
But there is a key difference that really sets this apart and amps up that heroic feel.
Okay.
And that's that the Born a Hero setting rule is in effect. So what this means is that during character creation, you can ignore the rank requirements for edges.
Oh, okay.
Now, you still have to meet any other prerequisites, so like minimum attribute or skill level.
Right.
But it means that you can build a more powerful, interesting character right out of the gate.
Makes sense. You're not playing as a rookie. You're jumping into this world as, a seasoned hero.
Exactly.
So that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So then you've got edges and hindrances. You can pick hindrances, character flaws.
Yeah.
To get extra points to buy edges or, boost your attributes and skills.
Right.
And as we mentioned before, the different races of Mongo all come with their own unique racial abilities and sometimes hindrances.
Yeah.
Just to add another layer of customization.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of the Mongo races,
yes,
the game really goes in depth on this.
it does.
Can you give us some examples of, some of the cool and interesting traits?
Sure. So let's take the Corellians, for example.
Okay.
Now, these are the aquatic folks from the undersea kingdoms.
Right.
If they undergo a special conversion process, they become amphibious.
Okay.
So they can breathe air and water, no problem. And they get a bonus to their swimming skill, but there's a catch.
Okay.
They have a dependency.
Uh-huh.
They need to soak in water for at least an hour every single day.
Okay.
Or they start suffering from fatigue.
Gotcha.
Now, you've also got the dwarfs.
Who live in those underground tunnels. So, of course, they have low light vision.
Yeah.
They're naturally tough. They start with a D6 in vigor, but they're also small, which subtracts from their toughness.
Okay.
And a lot of them have phobias of creatures from their homelands.
Right.
Like the mountain dwarfs are terrified of wolverons.
So really cool advantages, but they're balanced out with some interesting drawbacks.
Exactly.
I like that it really makes each of the races feel distinct.
For sure.
Okay, so what other races we got?
So you've also got hawkmen.
Okay.
Incredibly agile, and of course they can fly.
Yeah, of course.
You've got the lion men.
Okay.
Who are strong. They have claws, low light vision. But they have this ingrained hatred for shark men.
Right, it's that classic rivalry.
Yeah.
So good.
You've got the lizard men who are also agile.
Okay.
They have natural armor because of their scales, and they're resistant to heat, but they're vulnerable to the cold.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then there's robots.
Oh, robots.
Yeah, they're like walking tanks.
They've got natural armor and they're constructs, so a lot of the nasty effects don't work on them.
Yeah.
But they need to recharge.
Right.
They're weak to electricity, and they're often treated as outsiders.
So again, like cool advantages, but some really interesting limitations as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, even the baseline Mongolians, which are basically humans.
They get a free edge and some extra racial abilities just to reflect the diverse cultures on the planet.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the sheer imagination that's gone into these races is amazing. You could make some really unforgettable characters.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about Mongo-Tech before.
Yes.
But let's dive into weird science.
Okay.
Because it sounds like such a cornerstone of the Flash Gordon experience in this RPG.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Okay.
So weird science is presented as wild, unpredictable, and completely essential.
Love it.
It's all about creating and using these crazy gadgets that just, bend the laws of physics, and it's so entertaining.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got the arcane background, weird science, then the Mongo-Tech Edge is what you want.
Okay.
This basically lets you MacGyver devices on the spot using your weird science skill and your PowerPoints.
So like mid-battle, if I have the know-how and I have the PowerPoints, I could just like whip up a ray gun out of, spare parts and a power crystal.
Yeah, pretty much. You just got to make a successful weird science roll, and you need to have the power points to fuel your invention.
Right.
The game even encourages you to come up with some ridiculous, technobabble explanation.
Of course.
For how it works.
Love it.
But of course, because it's weird science, these gadgets aren't always reliable.
Right.
So you've got this potential for malfunctions.
Oh, no.
Which means that your gizmo might fizzle out or do something completely unexpected at the worst possible time.
At the worst possible time, of course.
Yeah. And then you need to make a repair roll to try and get it back online.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's so Flash Gordon. It's these amazing inventions that are just as likely to save the day as they are to, explode in your face.
Right.
I love it.
It's great.
So let's talk combat.
Okay.
How does combat work in the Flash Gordon RPG?
So combat is fast, furious, and full of those crazy dramatic reversals you see in the comics and the films.
Okay.
It uses the playing card initiative system that Savage Worlds is known for, which injects a really fun tactical element into each round.
So it's not just, my turn, your turn. It could change every round.
Exactly. Yeah, you draw a card every round to determine your initiative.
I like that.
Keeps you on your toes.
Right.
Now they've also added some new combat maneuvers and tweaked existing rules to fit the setting.
Okay.
So one example is extreme range firing. You can take a shot at a target that's really far away.
Okay.
Way beyond the normal range of your weapon, but you sacrifice your usual aim bonus.
Right.
And take a penalty to hit.
Makes sense.
Yeah. They've also given grappling rules a big overhaul, introducing these conditions entangled and bound.
Okay.
Which represent those crazy creature attacks or those technological restraints.
So like those energy nets and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Now, entangled characters, they're stuck in place and they're distracted.
Okay.
So they take penalties to pretty much everything they do.
Gotcha.
Bound is even worse.
Oh, no.
So you can't move, you're distracted, you're vulnerable,
right.
Which means you're easier to hit and you can't perform any physical actions except try to break free.
Wow.
So it's a really bad place to be.
That's rough.
But to encourage those, over-the-top actions, they've got this thing called creative combat.
Yeah.
If you score a raise on a trick or a test of will during combat, instead of just shaking your opponent, you get to roll on this creative combat table for all sorts of fun effects, like catching your breath, getting a Benny.
Which is a Savage Worlds reroll token.
Exactly. Or even getting a free turn.
Yeah. A free turn?
Yeah.
That's huge.
It is a big deal.
Especially in combat.
Yeah. It really rewards players for thinking outside the box,
Yeah.
Taking risks, trying those improbable stunts.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the game also has these specific setting rules that are designed to make you feel like you're playing in a Flash Gordon adventure.
Yes.
So one of the coolest is the cliffhanger setting rule.
Okay.
So just like the old serials.
Right.
The players at the start of each session, they get a cliffhanger token.
Okay.
And at any point during the session, they can cash this in as a group to trigger a classic cliffhanger scenario.
Okay.
So this could be anything from suddenly being captured to facing, some massive disaster, like a natural disaster.
Right.
They could face a dangerous environmental hazard. A new threat could pop up.
Okay.
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Right.
They could stumble through a portal into a weird new dimension.
Nice.
Or even just get ambushed by enemy reinforcements.
Each of these comes with its own setup and potential rewards.
Right.
Like refilling your bennies or earning conviction tokens.
So it's really a way to bake in that classic serial narrative structure right into the gameplay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great.
All right, so what are these conviction tokens?
Okay, so conviction is a special reward.
Okay.
It's often tied to surviving these crazy cliffhangers.
Okay.
And it's a physical token that you hold on to. And when you spend one, it adds a D6 to any trait roll or damage roll that you make.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And that D6 can even ace.
Nice.
So it could explode and you get to roll again.
So it's like a little bonus for when you need to push your luck,
Exactly. And you can only use one per roll.
Right.
But it's a great way to try and pull off something amazing in a clutch moment.
Yeah, that extra oof. When you really need it.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other setting rules that really capture that Flash Gordon feel?
So another big one is fast healing.
Okay.
Wild cards, which are the PCs and the major NPCs.
Yeah.
They recover from wounds and fatigue way faster than your average mook.
Oh, wow.
So they can make a natural healing roll once per day instead of every 5 days.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, it is.
So are there any other setting rules that you really like?
Yeah. So there's also knockout blow.
Okay.
Which if a character takes a serious hit when they're already vulnerable, there's a chance they'll just get knocked unconscious.
Oh, okay.
So it adds to that dramatic feel.
Right.
You've also got planetary romance, which reflects all those romantic entanglements in the Flash Gordon stories.
Of course.
So at the start of each session, someone rolls to see who the focus of a subplot is going to be.
Right.
And then the GM introduces a side story based on a drawn card.
So it's like a built-in romantic subplot.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a great way to capture that element of the source material.
Absolutely.
Then there's this bonus for the unarmored hero.
Okay.
So if you choose to go without armor or a shield, you get a bonus to your soak rolls.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so you know that classic pulp hero who's relying on their skills and their daring rather than, heavy protection.
I like that.
And then there's the wound cap.
Okay.
Which means that no matter how much damage a single hit might inflict, a wild card can never suffer more than 4 wounds from it.
Oh, wow.
So even a direct hit from Ming's death ray is capped at 4 wounds to soak.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So basically you're not going to die from one shot.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so then also if you take to the skies, in your rocket ships or flying machines, whatever.
There are specific rules for sky battles, which adapt the chase rules for, high-altitude vehicular combat.
Oh, that's cool. So they really thought of everything.
They did.
It sounds like they really wanted to make you feel like you're in a Flash Gordon adventure.
For sure.
Okay, so let's go back to the arcane backgrounds.
All right.
For those players who want to have special powers, we've got Mongo-mancy, psionics, and weird science.
Yes.
What makes each of those unique?
So Mongo-mancy is essentially magic. On Mongo.
Right.
And Mongomancers, they tap into the electromagnetic energy of white sapphires using these crystal foci.
So they actually need crystals to cast their spells.
Yes.
Yeah.
And their arcane skill is Mongomancy, which is linked to their smarts.
Okay.
They have a pool of power points to fuel their magic, and they learn a selection of starting powers.
Gotcha.
Now, they also have this backlash mechanic, which means that on a critical failure, they could become shaken or fatigued.
So there's a risk associated with using this magic.
Right. It's not just free power,
Okay.
And some of those more common magic powers from Savage Worlds are off limits to Mongomancers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like teleportation, summoning allies, those are not available.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it gives it a much more grounded, setting-specific feel.
Right. It makes sense. It's not just generic magic. It's something unique to Mongo.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about psionics?
So psionic abilities are super rare on Mongo.
Okay.
Now, scions often have these really distinctive violet eyes.
Which they might try to conceal using a special tea.
So they can hide their powers if they need to.
Yeah, if they want to blend in.
Right.
Now, their arcane skill is psionics.
Okay.
Which is linked to smarts. They have power points. They learn starting powers just like the Mongomancers.
Okay.
But their big drawback is brain burn.
Brain burn.
Yeah, so if they push themselves too hard on a critical failure, their mind could overload.
Oh, no.
And it could even affect nearby allies.
Oh.
So it's not something to be trifled with.
Right.
Now, what's really cool about scions is that they can actually use their powers even when they're bound.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because it's all mental.
Right.
They also choose a specific psionic school.
Okay.
Empathy, pyrokinesis, telekinesis, or telepathy.
They're like second disciplines.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, gross.
And that dictates what powers they can use.
Right.
So like an empath might be able to sense and manipulate emotions.
Okay.
Or even use their abilities to heal others.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really versatile.
So internal mental power with specializations. I like that.
Yeah.
So then finally we have weird science.
Yes.
Which, as we've seen, is all about the gadgets.
Yeah, so weird scientists are the classic inventors, the pinkerers. They're harnessing Mongo's strange energies through this blend of science and power crystals.
Right.
Their arcane skill is weird science, linked to smarts. They've got power points and starting powers.
Right.
But the key difference is that their powers are always channeled through their gadgets.
Okay.
So they're using the standard Savage Worlds device rules.
Gotcha.
And the main drawback, of course, is malfunction.
Right.
So their inventions can break down, they can go haywire.
Yeah.
And then they need to make a repair roll to fix them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So they've got access to a lot of different powers, but they're always reliant on their creations.
Exactly.
So basically, each of these arcane backgrounds has a really distinct feel to it.
It does.
And a different set of capabilities.
So players can play all sorts of different characters in the Flash Gordon universe.
Yeah, from crystal mages to mind readers to mad scientists. It's really cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
So this has been an absolutely amazing deep dive into the Flash Gordon RPG.
It has.
It really sounds like it captures the feel of the source material. You know?
It does.
That whirlwind of wonder, the thrilling action, the crazy imaginative adventures.
Yes.
If you're a fan of pulp adventure or sci-fi action or just looking for a really fun tabletop experience, you need to check this game out.
Absolutely. It's a blast to play.
Yeah, so if you're ready to strap on a rocket pack, grab a ray gun, and yell, "Flash!" At the top of your lungs, then you need to check this out.
Do it.
Maybe dust off that 1980s movie.
Host speaker.